Well, welcome to the Point Arena Light Station. Come on in. My name is Bill, and I'll begin by introducing you to the centerpiece of our museum directly over my shoulder. This is our first order Fresnel lens. And it's called a Fresnel lens because that's who invented it. Augustin Jean Fresnel was a French physicist, and he invented this particular type of lens in the early 1800s. Now, this particular lens used to live up in the top of our tower, and it lived up there from 1908 until 2008 when we brought it down, and we did so for a number of reasons. Number one, this was taken out of commission back in 1977, so it was sitting up there non-operational since then. No worries, we've had an automatic beacon mounted on the outside of the tower since that day, so it's a working lighthouse and has been all this time. Now, this particular lens is comprised of over 600 separate prisms. Almost all of these, particularly the larger lenses, have an even number of sides. Also, each side of this lens, as you see, has two circles. We call that a double bullseye pattern. Most lenses have a single bullseye. So what all that means is, as this rotated, because of that design, it's used to send out two flashes of light very quickly. 6 seconds till the next side comes around, two flashes of light every 6 seconds. And if you happen to be a captain, navigator, or mariner sailing by and saw that, you knew you were sailing by Point Arena because they're all different. Each one unique and distinct. Now, this particular lens was manufactured in Paris, France, came over in 1908 when our tower was constructed, right along with this device in the corner. This device in the corner is called a Mercury float lens drive. And this machine used to make that rotate. So all of this lived up in the top of the tower. The lens used to be mounted right on top of that large spindle. That lens with the base weighs 4,700 pounds. So all 4,700 pounds, nearly 2.5 tons, rode on a bath of mercury. This vat used to contain 5.3 gallons of mercury. This vat is very large, there's a lot of capacity here. It probably only filled it up to that level. However, finally, it served as a frictionless lubricant, allowing that lens to spin freely. More importantly, a liquid bearing. So the lens actually rode on top of the mercury instead of ball bearings or rollers or chariot wheels, which is another device that certain lighthouses use. And they did it in this particular case because 4,700 pounds making one rotation every 18 seconds, ball bearings would wear out just like that. When the weight descends, the lens turns. It's called a clockwork mechanism. It works just like a grandfather or a cuckoo clock. This was extremely efficient. It worked well for years. However, there was a great amount of work involved. It took 4 lighthouse keepers to keep this place operational, simply because it only took 75 minutes for the weight to descend, about 10 minutes to crank it back up. So close to every hour all night long, Mr. Lighthouse Keeper had to rewind the clock. In the meantime, there was other things that had to be taken care of. One, the maintenance of the lamp itself, and he did so by climbing on this to get inside the lens, because of course that's where the oil lamp lived. It had to be refueled a couple times a night. That's very simple, you're just refueling it. However, that particular lamp had 5 concentric wicks, and what that means is they were round, kind of like a tube sock, nested larger, larger, larger. Each had their own individual adjustment. They had to be trimmed, the airflow had to be correct. If not, you're making smoke and soot all over the inside of your 10-foot tall chandelier over there, which you would have to polish off. So bottom line is, these gentlemen worked very hard around the clock, a lot of maintenance involved. Down here on the ground, this building's called the Fog Signal Building, every bit as much work. Before compressors, electricity, and generators, what drove foghorns or fog signals was steam. We all know how you make steam. Multiple boilers stoked with firewood 24 hours a day. Why? Fog rolls in 5 minutes. You have to have a head of steam up in order to operate your fog signal when needed. And it was operated, by the way, day or night, depending upon density of fog. That was the head lighthouse keeper's call. So everything associated with that had to be done. Of course, I'm talking about chopping firewood. In our particular case, the foghorn that used to operate here sent out a 6-second blast. We all know what a foghorn sounds like. Every 20 seconds. 6-second blast every 20 seconds. Point Arena. Unique and distinct as well. You would not need the foghorn. It's a sunny day. But what you'd use as your navigational aid is that tall, skinny white thing we have over there. It's all white with a black top, and you know that's Point Arena because it does not have a candy cane wrapped around it. It does not have diamonds. It's not yellow and black. It's not red and white. It doesn't have checkerboard. And the U.S. government controls that along with the light signature and auditory signature and provides charts to your navigators, captains, and mariners so they know where they're sailing by.
We'll go to the top and then I'll give you the whole story. I'll start the story at kind of the beginning, mainly 1849. In California, there was a big deal, it was a gold rush. Before that time, there weren't that many people living in California. San Francisco had several thousand people. But then after the gold rush, a lot of people moved here. Several 100,000 people moved here within 6 months to a year. All those people had to live somewhere. A lot of them, most of them, wanted to make it rich in the gold fields, and they didn't really. Some of them did. They had to live somewhere. And so boats started going up and down the coast to get wood to build San Francisco, wood from the redwood forests. And those boats would come down this coastline, and they'd either get washed up on that beach over there. If you get washed up on the beach, or at least inside the breaker line, you're not going to be able to tack your way out in a sailing boat. So some of those would hit here. Some of them would cut across this bay to try and get around the headland, and they'd run into that rock out there. So you can't really see that well now, but in a minute you'll see a big splash as the wave hits it. That's called arena rock. It's 6 feet under the surface of the water at low tide, and it's about the size of a football field. So you can imagine if it's all foggy and there aren't a whole lot of waves and you're sailing across there, you could easily run into that rock, like many ships have. Many ships have run into it and sunk. And in fact, in the 1850s, along the northern Mendocino coast here, there were approximately 1 shipwreck every month along this coastline. So the government was pretty much forced into building lighthouses because to reduce the loss of life and loss of property. So this was started in 1869. In 1869 was that Maker's Mark at the bottom. That's when they built the staircase. It was finished in 1870, and the tower was constructed with a large lens in it, just the same size as the one downstairs. And it could be seen for 23.5 nautical miles out to sea. And it's the curvature of the earth that presents it, or prevents it from being seen even further than that. So they built this lighthouse, and it worked. It saved a lot of lives. In 1906, another big deal happened here in California, and that was the earthquake. And the earthquake really shook some things up. If you look back here, along the baseline of the hills, that's the trace of the San Andreas Fault, which goes pretty much all the way from here, where the fault first enters the continent, all the way down through San Francisco, past Los Angeles, and pretty much into Mexico. That earthquake, when it hit, was a big one. And there was a guy working up here. His job title and job description was Wiki, because he had to trim the wick of that oil lamp. If you don't trim the wick, it smokes, and then you have to clean all that glass. And I tell you, that glass took 8 hours to clean. So they were pretty diligent about trimming that wick. And well, he describes it as being up here, and the tower shook a little bit. And this is early in the morning. I mean, the guy's hadn't had his coffee yet, probably. And the top of the tower, he said, it swayed about 4 feet to the south, back vertically, 4 feet to the north. And I did this several times. And that's a pretty huge motion if you're up here 115 feet up above ground level. And all the windows around here just broke out, and the lens that was in here filling up this whole room just shattered into millions of pieces. And there were reports that bricks had fallen off the top 20 feet or so of the lighthouse down to the ground. So you can imagine this guy was pretty concerned about it. He may have quit his job and moved to Kansas to get away from earthquake. Yeah, he didn't. He stuck around and he helped rebuild the lighthouse. And they had it back up again within a couple of years. So they rebuilt the tower out of reinforced concrete. Now, cement with iron bars in it is a lot stronger than brick, and so that's why they rebuilt it that way. It was rebuilt by a chimney company out of San Francisco. So you basically just walked up a smokestack. But for good measure, even though they made it so strong, they put the staircase back in it. So this metal here is the original stuff from 1869. Now, you see the gazebo out there? Hollywood built that for us. Because in 1992, there was a movie filmed here called Forever Young. And it had Mel Gibson, Jamie Lee Curtis. They landed a bunch of bombers, actually World War II B-25 bombers, right out in that field there. They put a military expedient runway out, kind of laid it out on top of the grass. And,
I've been here about 20 years, not as a docent here, but I've lived around this area, and I've come up to this area a lot to watch the whales. And what I have seen is, over the years, I've seen them come. You see a very far rock out there where the last bit of white water is. And you see the rock as the wave splashes over it. And then you see the grouping of rocks right in front. The moms, the pregnant moms will come down, they'll swim between those two sets of rocks. We've had, over the last couple of weeks, we've had the resident population. So we've had some blues out here, the largest creatures ever on Earth. We've had some humpbacks out here, and it's a pretty spectacular spot. And as you can see, it's pretty rugged, and it can be pretty wild. So far as I know, people have asked me about tsunamis and things of that nature. So from everything I can tell, this bluff has never been overtopped. We've had some waves come in, I'm told, but they've never been overtopped. 1880, 10 years after they built the lighthouse. You could walk around it, you could ride a horse around it, you could probably take a horse and carriage around it. Okay, that's 1880. I can tell you something about the speed of erosion here, because by 1896, 16 years later, this hole had expanded so far it had undermined the foundation of this building. This is the original Foghorn building. They had to tear it down and they had to move it. That's the building they built for the new Foghorn, and they moved it several hundred feet away so as to not have that hole. Well, the reason that we're concerned about it is not because of what's out here, but if you turn around and look behind you, where those cars are parked, you'll notice that it's a pincer. We have erosion coming in from two sides. Yeah, it's coming at us. Looks like a East Coast lighthouse, built out of brick and mortar. Portland Head Light in Casco Bay, where I'm from, Maine, was built just like this out of brick and mortar, 1787. It's still standing. This one was built 100 years later almost, out of brick and mortar. It is not still standing. And the reason this one ain't standing and that one is because the land there doesn't move. The land here moved with this lighthouse on it. This lighthouse, this house, everything on it moved 16 feet north in 1 second. What? At 5 o'clock in the morning on April 18th of 1906.
Oh yeah, the earthquake.
And there was, the acceleration forces were so great that although the lighthouse did not collapse, structurally it was compromised so badly it had to be torn down. This caved in, this wooden structure here. Wooden structures rarely cave in. This was so powerful that it also caved in the roof and several of the L's. Everything had to be torn down. And if you'll notice when you go down in this lighthouse, as it did on the other, it was right around the circumference, the exterior of the circumference. So things were attached to the stairway. And they could fall off the stairway, but the stairway, being big dumb steel and metal, has some flexibility in it. It was able to absorb those shock waves, and it didn't bend, it didn't break, it stayed intact. And in fact, when they rebuilt this lighthouse out of reinforced concrete, first one in the United States to be built out of reinforced concrete, by the way, they tested everything that was remaining from the old lighthouse to see whether it could be used. This lantern room that you're standing in was the old lighthouse lantern room, not the roof. The roof is new, but from the side down and all this base, that's the original lantern room, that's the original stairway, both of those about 142 years old. So, we do not know the story, the end of the story here. We do not know what kind of structural forces this particular lighthouse will withstand. And someday we're going to find out. And I hope I will not be the docent that was up here in the lighthouse at that time. There's a picture downstairs. There's a big ship in 1949. 1949, it's about 200 feet long, and it's on that rock. And you can see from an aerial view, you can see in the picture, you can see the lighthouse, you can see the foghorn, and you can see the ship. I don't know what got that ship on that rock, but it never got off. It broke in half and it sank. And that's just one of, as we say, a couple hundred ships that have gone down here.